Hello and welcome to the presentation today. My name is Holden Kammerer and I will be giving my analysis of our shopping mall and the paid search campaign and the insights that we've gained from that campaign to make strategic recommendations on how to proceed from a marketing perspective. First, as you can see, a lot on the agenda today. We'll touch on the strategic recommendations gained from the analysis, as well as overviewing some of the key marketing challenges and opportunities that we've observed. Go over some of those key insights that we've gained from our paid search campaign, and last but not least, connect those recommendations to proposed future action that you could take to increase digital marketing efforts and capitalize on the momentum gained from the campaign. As you can see here, we've established three top recommendations for you to take as the CMO of the shopping mall. I'll let you digest for a second, but just to overview, first, we recommend continuing to invest in marketing for long-term revenue growth. As you can see, it was a costly effort, the paid search campaign, but we also saw huge revenue spikes in line with those heavy investments. So don't want to discourage or want to encourage investing. And even if you see costs go up, just be patient for those downstream revenue positive gains later on. Number two, drive consistencies across ad group performance and future campaigns. We also saw a lot of variation in ad group performance throughout the paid search campaign. So just something to note in terms of capitalizing on that opportunity and making it a little bit more consistent across the board. And then three, sharpen that campaign focus to reduce total costs moving forward. We also saw the opportunity to remove a lot of ad groups that didn't produce any conversions or very little to be a focus of spending for future campaigns. So where do we get this from? First, we'll ground ourselves in some of those challenges and opportunities that we observed throughout the process. Just to highlight, I'll read that first blurb. The campaign uncovered opportunities and key data insights for continued growth and positive momentum despite heavy investment, inconsistent ad group performance, and struggles with cost management. However, referring to the last slide, those strategic recommendations, if you adopt those recommendations, we believe it will lead to not only increased sustained ROI on marketing, a consistent brand story across ad groups, customer journey expansion from awareness to repeat purchaser, more data for period comparisons and ongoing performance measurement, but also optimize ad group performance to eliminate those unnecessary costs that can be driving up that total cost that we observed in the campaign. So to touch on those cost versus revenue aspects, that's where we'll start our discussion today. As you can see, the revenue versus cost breakdown from July to November in the chart to the right, and some of our overarching high-level average statistics across ad groups. And when we see average throughout the presentation, think per ad group. You can see some of our key insights gained in the middle. Overall, we saw that total cost outpaced total revenue in all months besides October. However, between July and October, this decline, as evidenced by the arrow here in the chart, is observed alongside a lagging bump in October revenue. So you can see that revenue here actually outpaced cost ever so slightly. And that second bullet, the significant cost investment in November, where the red bar is significantly higher than the rest of the months, also resulted in a revenue bar that was higher than the rest of the months. So therefore, our thinking is that heavy marketing investments can lead to an immediate boost in revenue, followed by increased lagging performance in the subsequent periods. Even though cost was going down significantly between July and September, we saw that bump from September to October, indicating that lagging positive performance. So even though that the cost went up pretty significantly in November, so did the revenue, and we also expect future revenue growth in the subsequent periods following that heavy investment. Moving on, we'll talk a little bit more about ad group performance. As you can see, we measured impressions to average CPC on the chart to the right-hand side. And it's not necessarily a one-to-one ratio of the top performing impressions ad groups being the top performing CPC ad groups. So just an important note as we continue on through the presentation. Similarly, you can see high-level statistics to the right. And some of our key findings here were that there was a lack of consistency across both impressions and clicks amongst the ad groups. So focusing on the two charts to the top of the picture to the right, you can see that those top performers don't necessarily correlate to the top performers as we move down the chart, and they're significantly higher than some of the other ad groups. So definitely a sign of a lack of consistency there, which could be due to audience size per the ad groups or targeting strategies to make sure our reach is appropriate. We also saw that CPR indicates reasonable cost effectiveness as a whole, although it's varied across ad groups. Therefore, our thinking here is that certain ad groups performed better than others, and there are opportunities to drive consistencies moving forward. Sticking to this whole digital engagement piece of the puzzle here, we also saw that the campaign demonstrated how impressions don't necessarily translate to immediate conversions. The general shape of this graph to the right follows the cost versus revenue graph pretty one-to-one. We saw that decline followed by a little bit of a bump in October, and then obviously there was a significant cost investment in November, which drove up impressions by a pretty wide margin. Um, but something else to note here is that although clicks generated appeared to be a fraction of the impressions generated across the campaign, being these yellow bars in the chart, the proportion of clicks to impressions it appears to be consistent. Even though impressions are significantly higher than the clicks, you can see that the proportion of impressions to clicks stays relatively consistent. Therefore, knowing the expected clicks to impressions proportion can help to budget plan in future campaigns. We also saw that heavy investment in November. So going back to that, it takes more of an investment to generate increased visibility and conversion activity in future periods. Touching back on ad group performance again, we wanted to specifically on this slide talk about converters versus non-converters. We saw a pretty stable conversion rate across the board with the average conversion rate being 8%, but we also saw that variation again across ad groups. The two bullet points that we've outlined here were that top performers were actually similar to the top performing ad groups for impressions and clicks when it came to conversions. However, there are still many ad groups that generated very little conversions that can be removed for future campaigns. So you see a lot of these little blue bars here when it comes to clicks and conversions. Those to us signify unnecessary costs. These are not as stable performers, not as reliant. And with the consistency here, we can reallocate those unnecessary costs to those top performers and generate even more clicks in future campaigns. Therefore, future campaigns can exclude or exude that sharper focus, removing those non-converting ad groups and focusing on top converters can reduce unnecessary costs and boost revenue when we double down on what makes us really tick with consumers. So to wrap it all up, we wanted to give some future action recommendations based on those strategic recommendations that we outlined at the beginning. Again, those recommendations being continuing to invest in marketing, driving consistencies across ad group performance, and sharpening that campaign focus to reduce total costs. You can see some of the bullet points. For number one, we recommend utilizing data and clicks to impressions ratios to confirm tactical budgeting, like we outlined on the slide, and determine a sustainable cost budget to mitigate cost versus revenue variability. As we saw, there was a lot of discrepancies month to month, but having a better understanding of where our costs are going to be allocated in a more stabilized way moving forward allows us to better plan. Number two, driving consistencies. Again, we want to make sure that we're testing content with focus groups and establishing feedback loops with our customers to see what content is sticking with our audiences and what is not. And also, we want to analyze our ad group segments and audiences to appropriately align messaging. As we called out with some of those performance discrepancies, a possible indicator of that would be that we need to resegment our audiences and make sure that the content is appropriate for those audiences. And maybe there's even a different way to segment those audiences, but it definitely requires a closer look. Last but not least, when it comes to sharpening campaign focus to reduce total costs, we recommend redeploying those funds saved from unnecessary costs to invest in those converters, again, doubling down on the things that really worked throughout the campaign, and also continue to monitor the performance effects of more informed investment decisions. Once we take these recommendations into account, we are looking to see less variability, more of that marketing ROI, and overall just better performance and a little bit easier performance to plan for moving forward. Um, we hope that you take these recommendations into consideration. We've also included an appendix slide so you can see some of those high level statistics when it comes to impressions, clicks, CTR, conversions, etc. Um, but all of that being said, thank you for allowing us to do the research on the paid search campaign. It's been an honor to speak to you today, and we hope that you take these recommendations into account for future digital marketing efforts. Thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.